to Direction Northeast. Hello, I'm Holly Carter. This program is a presentation of the Communications Department of Northeast State Community College. This episode of Direction Northeast takes a look at civil rights, soul, and spiritual music. We'll meet our guest and start our discussion following these messages.
My name is Jason Tipton. I'm a manufacturing technician for A.O. Smith, and I got my start at Northeast State. As part of my job here, I do design work with CAD, and those plans are implemented throughout the factory. And I continue to use a lot of what I've learned at Northeast State on a daily basis. I'm the type person that likes working with my hands, and now that I've got a degree from Northeast State, I'm able to do something I enjoy. In manufacturing, it's important to have the right tool for the job. Having an education from Northeast State has been that tool for my career.
From Billie Holiday and Aretha Franklin to Sly Stone and Marvin Gaye, music was an essential component of the civil rights movement, capturing vitality and idealism necessary to fuel dangerous marches, sit-ins, picket lines, and freedom rides. Our guest today is a soul singer, songwriter, actor, and preserver of the Negro spiritual. Jonathan Blanchard, welcome to Direction Northeast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Good. Okay, well, I'll just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got your start.
Okay. Well, I am a bass vocalist, soul singer, songwriter, and a lover of music in general. And I think that's how I got my start, being entrenched and in the arts and enriched by the arts at a very early age in the Memphis City school system, where I participated in acting guilds as well as choruses, choirs, small choral groups, ensembles, you name it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when was that moment that you knew this was what you wanted to do?
The first time I saw Michael Jackson. I think at that point, coming up in the early 80s, all the kids wanted to be Michael Jackson and break dance and all those kind of things. Those summers at my grandmother's house outside, she didn't let you come in while her stories were on. So we spent a lot of time outside, tearing up cardboard boxes and spinning around on the boxes like break dancers that we saw on videos from New York and things like that. I think that's when I first came to the realization that I wanted to entertain. I didn't know, however, that I wanted to sing until later on in my matriculation.
Okay, but you always knew you wanted to dance.
I always knew I wanted to entertain.
Yeah.
I'm not a good dancer. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we all attempted to dance because of what was popular at the time. So, people like Michael Jackson, as well as what we considered local artists that were actually world-renowned artists like Earth, Wind & Fire and Isaac Hayes, the Barcades, people like that, Stax Records. That was a very heavy influence on what I've become today.
Okay, and as far as the instruments that you play now, did you always grow up like a musical family?
No, my mother and father are typical middle-class parents, meaning they force their children, and I hope you're watching this, Mom, they force their children into piano and violin lessons. And I was one of those lucky victims lucky participants in those classes as well, taking Suzuki at an early age, violin and viola. But I didn't enjoy it until I got to college. And when I went to Tennessee State University and decided to become a music major, all this stuff came back into play. And I found myself in classes like string technique and piano for 4 years. So at this point, I played just enough piano to be able to read and compose music, and just enough violin to annoy the cats in the neighborhood.
Right. Out of all the places you performed, where are your favorites?
Oh, wow. You know what? The favorite places I performed for Amelia Boynton. She is one of the mothers of the Civil Rights era. And she was having her 98th birthday down in Tuskegee, Alabama. And I was invited to come and sing for her a cappella. That was one of my favorite moments. And I think another was performing for Harry Belafonte 2 years ago. The SCLF was having a celebration, and they were honoring him. And myself and a full band were given the opportunity to perform some of his hits, as you would say.
How did that feel to perform for someone like that?
Oh, that was awesome. That was awesome to have him there, sitting in the front row, and with his family, and just being able to pay tribute to someone who has given this country and this world so much, whether it be his activism here or his aiding of countries in Africa as well. Yeah, so it was a pleasure and a treat to be able to perform for someone of that caliber.
Define civil rights music for us.
The music that spurred a movement, I would say. We are talking about, well, let's just discuss what music is. Music is that language that everyone understands. Even if you don't recognize the words, you feel it. Whether I'm singing in Italian, or I'm singing in French, or I'm singing in English, or I'm singing in Kiswahili. When you feel it, when you hear it, you feel it. And it moves you one way or the other, and that's why it's called music. So bringing that back to the civil rights movement as it was, or even as it is, to have a soundtrack that is written by people that are right there in the time, living right there in the moment, really opens the movement itself up to a broader audience. People that may not be able to relate necessarily to the movement or the issues that brought about the movement can relate to the music and can sympathize or empathize with what they are feeling from the music. Take, for example, a song by Marvin Gaye, or a song by the Staple Singers, or a song by Sly and the Family Stone, talking about exactly what's going on in the community. If I, as a politician or a civil rights leader, I get up and give a speech, it's only going to reach but so many people. But these people that were creating music have a platform, a world platform, where people of all races, creeds, colors, and economic levels are affected by their art. And see, that is the purity of art in general, that it reaches beyond all barriers, because you have to appreciate it as art. But it also leaves you with something to think about. You can make laws all day long trying to shape or form people's behavior, but art changes souls, So when you think about music in that context, it gives you a clearer picture of how music was perhaps a catalyst for the civil rights movement.
Okay, what specific songs spoke to you?
You may not drive a great big Cadillac, gangsta white walls, TV haters in the back. Curtis Mayfield. Though you may not have a car at all, just remember, brothers and sisters, that we can still stand tall. Just remember, just be thankful for what you got. That was one of those songs. A lot of people were going through difficult times, and they needed the upliftment of those kind of songs. Not only that, but people like Marvin Gaye, or What's Going On, and Mercy, Mercy Me, Inner City Blues, Donny Hathaway. These people came together, Aretha Franklin, talking about respect. You see, when you talk about civil rights movement, you're not just talking about the rights of African Americans. These people were on the front line fighting for their rights, as well as women's rights, as well as rights for the environment. If it was not for the civil rights movement, the human rights movement, we wouldn't be discussing rights for immigrants. we wouldn't be discussing gay rights. We wouldn't be discussing human rights. So you have this small group of people fighting for rights for African Americans, and it turns into a fight and a struggle for equality across the board. You know.
How does that affect you personally?
We are not as far removed from that time period as we think we are. In fact, some would say that we are right back in that space now where we're still fighting. I mean, you think about what's going on with the murders and the killing of random black men. You know, it's almost as if there's an open season. And being a black man, I can relate to that. Or just looking at how authority treats people in general. You know, I've seen videos of officers kicking women in the back of the head who are sitting on the concrete handcuffed. You know, so we're still dealing with the same kind of issues. You know, the players haven't changed. Their outfits have changed a little bit, but it's still kind of the same stuff. And as long as we are divided and watching it happen, it will continue to happen. So for me, how does it relate? We're living in it. You know, it's how does it relate to you? How does it relate to anybody that's watching? You know, we're seeing these things happen before our eyes. The question is, what are we willing to sacrifice to affect change? You know, we've become very complacent and very comfortable. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us have. But even then, in the 60s, in the late 50s, in the 60s, everybody was not in the struggle. It was a small group of people. It looks like everybody when we watch television, but that's not the reality of it. It was a small group of people that were determined to affect change. And I would like to think of myself or see myself in the light of wanting to affect change, you know, so that we can all have an equal opportunity. Life is not fair, but equality is something that I think is attainable, you know, for everyone. You know, opportunity, I believe, is attainable for everyone, and that's what we try to share through the music.
With all that being said, so you're saying that your music can apply to everyone and all music, no matter whether you understand it or can relate, but it can apply to you in some way.
Good music has a way of moving the soul, you know. I mean, how many of us have gone to an opera and we don't speak Italian and we don't speak English, but at some point your mind and body conform to what you're hearing and you begin to slowly understand what's taking place. You know when the scene is sad. You know when somebody's father has died in the opera. You know when there's a love interest about to enter. You know when a conflict is about to start because the music changes. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, think about it. Any commercial, television show, or movie you've ever heard or seen has a soundtrack. You know, I mean, whether it's commercials for a coffee brand or a Geico commercial, and when you hear these sounds or when you hear these tunes, you automatically associate it with the brand. So you don't have to understand what's being said. If it's there and it's good, you will feel it. You know.
Okay, what artist has influenced you the most?
Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was born in 1898. He was the son of a ex-slave who became a preacher. Paul Robeson went to Princeton and he studied law. He graduated with a law degree. He's a professional football player, All-American lacrosse player, an actor, an activist, spoke several languages, and at the end of the day, he was a man's man who stood up for what he thought was right, despite the fact that he was blacklisted, despite the fact that he was unable to create income for his family. During the time that he was blacklisted, he still stood up for what he believed in, and he said it unapologetically. And to me, he is what a man should be. So musically, that's who influences me primarily. He and Marvin Gaye, and Curtis Mayfield. Those are my influences. Barry White, of course.
And what made them so special to you?
There is a strength in honesty. And I found these people in their careers as artists to be very honest, unapologetically so. Whether they were talking about activism or whether they were talking about the relationship between man and woman. They were themselves, and they pushed the envelope. And that is what I hope to do as well. As far as who I'm mostly influenced by in general, my heroes are my parents. Yeah.
Okay, what other values besides honesty and things like working together in the Break Bread song do you want to portray in your music?
Well, I hope that my music is liberating. I hope that someone listening to my music will say it's okay for me to have an opinion that is outside of the norm or doesn't quite mesh with the status quo. I hope that my music will be a soundtrack to change, you know, and will somehow bring comfort and ease, or if not, bring anger and conflict. If my music can do that and cause change that way, I'm okay with that too. You know, because people have to be upset oftentimes to stand up for what they believe in. And if my music makes you angry, then good.
How would you compare American music today to yours? Do you think that they follow the civil rights guidelines as far as music?
I would say that artists have always been and will always be artists. They're influenced by their environment, and they influence their environment. But see, being an artist and being a commercial artist are two different things. Commercial meaning your music is played on primary radio stations who control exactly what's being played and the message or lack thereof that's being put out there. So you have to be very careful not to judge today's artists by what's being played on the radio. They have no control over that, you know. I would encourage people to check out not only your mainstream artists and listen to their entire CD, but also check out some of your local artists. And if you check out some of your local artists, you'll see that there are tons of people out there that are just as concerned about our society as I am. And they're putting out great music. It sounds good, has a great message, it's produced well, you know. And even some of your mainstream artists that you love to hate, as oftentimes I do as well. Mm-hmm. If you listen to their CDs and you listen to it in its entirety, you'll find one or two songs that really kind of reveal who they are and what's on their mind, you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
Compare your music to other types of spiritual music.
Well, mine is funky. the spirituals that I rearrange are not traditional. And when I say traditional, I'm talking about when the spiritual came out of the field and hit the European opera stage. So that's not even traditional, but that's what we consider traditional, is when it hit the opera stage. My music has a little bit more bite to it. It has a little bit more of those things that influence me: funk, jazz, and soul. So imagine Paul Robeson meets Isaac Hayes. How would Isaac Hayes, how would he perform Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, versus how Paul Robeson would sing it? Let's see, Paul Robeson would say, swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot. Isaac would say, swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. You see the difference? There's a difference in approach, but the message is still there. The words have not been changed.
What is the basis of Negro spiritual?
The spirituals are a art form that came out of a practical necessity. When enslaved Africans were brought to this country, they were stripped of their religion, their tradition, and their languages. So they had to devise a way of communicating with one another in secret. So they took stories from the Bible and transformed them into song. So when you hear songs like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, coming forth to carry me home, you're thinking automatically a Bible story, which in fact they are talking about the chariot representing the Underground Railroad coming down south, swinging low to carry me home to freedom. It says, I looked over Jordan. Jordan is a river. Okay, what river in the U.S. could they be talking about? They could be talking about the Mississippi if you're crossing west, or they could be talking about the Ohio and Missouri River if you're crossing north. So these songs had practical use. These songs were tools. These songs were guides, and also they were used just to emote sorrow sometimes, because slaves were not allowed to feel, or at least publicly. The concept, the idea was to break them down as far as you could to the status of animal, meaning that showing any signs of humanity could get you in trouble. So that's where the spiritual comes from.
Okay, how has Negro spiritual evolved to present day?
Well, if you think of the spiritual in the context of coming out of a situation of oppression, and then you see how it shapes itself into the blues and country and jazz and gospel, moving on into the funk. It's still coming out of the oppressed part of the society. All this stuff comes out of the spiritual. Even your hip hop, your traditional forms of hip hop are talking about the environment of the writer and the obstacles that the writer or people that the writer know are facing. That's where hip hop comes from. Or you listen to the break beat in hip hop that comes from James Brown, or James Brown's drummer, who received it from the syncopation of the spiritual, the 2 and the 4, even with the scale, the slave scale, those black keys on your keyboard, they call them the slave scale. We call it the pentatonic scale. That comes from West Africa. They brought that with them on the slave ship, and oftentimes you can still hear that scale in modern music.
Do you believe that your music makes a difference?
It makes me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel better. It makes me feel as if I've contributed something, and I hope that it does the same thing for somebody else. You know.
Thank you. We'll be back in just a moment to wrap up Direction Northeast.
My name is Brad Ketcherin. I'm a registered nurse, and I got my start at Northeast State. I chose nursing because it gives me the opportunity to take care of people. I know I'll always have a job, and it gives me the opportunity to travel, which I've always wanted to do. So Northeast State was a great start for me. I was able to get my associate's degree there and transfer to a four-year college to get my RN license. I had always planned on going to college, but I wasn't really sure where I was going to go. After graduating Northeast State, I can truly say it was a good decision.
That concludes the program for today. We have talked about civil rights music and musicians. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Blanchard.
What's happening, everybody? My name is Jonathan Blanchard, and I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Sam Martin, and we are going to do an original for you called Tired of Waiting on Somebody Else. Ooh, 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 ooh. Who do you think you are? Misleading my people, yeah. Said you won't get far, no. I got my sister wearing tight clothes and things, yeah. Spreading wide for the picture, trying to make a little change, yeah. I got her thinking she's less than a queen. Next time you call out a name, you're gonna have to deal with me. I ain't trying to be bad, but there ain't much time left. If you cannot help me, say, I guess I gotta do it myself. Cause I'm tired, waiting on somebody else. 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 Said you gotta go down, way down in Egypt land. Tell these false preachers to let my people go. Cause I'm tired, waiting on somebody else. Tell these Uncle Tom MCs, let my people go. Ooh, 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 ooh. Cause I'm tired, waiting on somebody else. Said I'm tired, waiting on somebody else. Cause I'm tired, waiting on somebody else. Cause I'm tired, waiting on somebody else.